Welcome everyone today. So it is the end of National Elder Law Month, one of my favorite months of the year. I say that to you as an elder law attorney. That is my background: probate, estate administration, trust administration, a little bit of guardianship and conservatorship in the early years, and then elder law across the board. So we're going to talk about what that means today and focus on the key ways to successfully growing, managing, and creating the elder law practice you need. I always think it's interesting when we say need and not want, right? There's things that we want, but there are things that we need in our practice so that we can better serve ourselves and our clients. My name is Audrey Ehrhardt. It's my 20th year as a lawyer in Florida, so I'm dating myself. And then about 10 years ago, I went into a journey with legal technology. And with Practice 42, we are here to support the needs of your practice, to make things run like a well-oiled machine. And a lot of that today means harnessing the power of automation, delegation, and technology in your practice. Believe me, if you had told me 20 years ago that I would be doing so much with legal technology, I probably would have looked at you like you were a little bit crazy. But now today, there's so much that we can do in the digital space. There's so much still that we can do in the physical space. I ran my practice initially 20 years ago with Excel spreadsheets and sticky notes. And I'll be honest with you, it's hard to break that model. But we're going to talk about what that means today and how do we set up our practice, really that focus. We're talking about key ways to successfully grow, manage, and create the firm that you want. And a lot of that comes into what do you want? What do you want for your practice? Elder law is a very unique animal, right? And I had a radio show in my first solo law practice called Elder Law Starts at 18. And why is that? It's because the minute that we become 18 as Americans, that's the moment no one can make our decisions anymore. If I'm going to college, my parents may not be able to pay my tuition. If I'm in a car accident, they may not be able to act for my healthcare needs. If I don't have an estate plan, what will happen? The minute that we are one day past 18, that's when all of this happens. And yet elder law also has all of these different facets. We have Social Security, and we have long-term care planning and VA, and we have probate and estate planning, and all different ways that we can help those around us. And sometimes, if you're like me and you had an elder law practice and you just walk in, people come in because, well, they're older, and older Americans are those who are defined by the US government as 60 and older, and they might just choose you for something completely not in your wheelhouse, that conversation of what do you do and what do you not do, but they choose you because you say you help elder law folks. So obviously elder law means older folks, regardless of what it is. And so a lot of times we're more in that space where we are counselor at law, right? Attorney and counselor at law. A lot of times our clients are coming to us and they have questions that are outside of our niche, outside of what we do. According to the National Elder Law Foundation, there are over 13 types of elder law. I use quotations if you're listening to this and not seeing me use air quotations. But we have to fine tune in our practice. What do we do? What do we do well? And at the end of the day, what do we want to do? What do we need to do? What is your niche within elder law? I think the way most attorneys that I work with in coaching or consulting or working in their systems like legal boards, one of the things we have to do is whittle into what do we do and then what do we not do? Because that's how we're really going to fine tune our process and move things forward. Can I handle a trust administration for a special needs child? Sure, I can, but have I done it in a few years? No, I haven't. So I need to think about what am I doing in that space? Am I going to re-educate myself? Am I going to co-counsel? Am I going to get a mentor? Or instead, one of my niches is filing Medicaid applications and the preparation that goes around with that, VA pension applications. Am I going to stay in my vein? So what are the things that I do well? And then how do I help my community? But then we look at the elder law client, and our whole conversation needs to be about how do I meet my client where they are? We constantly have that. I liken that to the questionnaire conversation where people say to me all the time, Audrey, there's no way that a senior, a little bit ageist here, there's no way a senior can fill out an online questionnaire. I can tell you right now, they absolutely can fill out an online questionnaire because today it's almost impossible to go to see a doctor or a dentist or even to get your car serviced without an online questionnaire. So how can our practice meet our clients where they are? And our client could be that senior, that true senior, over 60, over 70, over over 90. We also could be working with the sandwich generation caregiver, that unique person who's helping care for a true senior, but also has a younger person at home, whether they're in college, they're in diapers, they're bridging that gap of working full time plus meeting the needs of an older parent and a younger child, the sandwich generation caregiver. And then we have a number of younger folks today. I read a disturbing statistic just a month ago that said less than 26% of Americans had a current estate plan. We have the statistic from the pandemic, so at the end of 2020, that said less than 43% of Americans had an estate plan at all. But now we have this really chilling survey that says 26% of Americans have an accurate estate plan. And all of this falls under the heading of elder law. And why is it so important to talk about this in May? May is two big holidays. We have National Elder Law Month and we have National Older Americans Month. Now, you may be sitting back going, well, Audrey, this is super timely. The end of the month is about to end. Yes, the month is about to end, but your elder law focus and your elder law marketing and getting out in your community on advocacy and talking to those around you isn't over. It's just beginning. If you're not out in your community having webinars, holding seminars, holding webinars, talking to other professionals, this is just starting your journey. We need to start that conversation of showing you as the thought leader and how you're able to ease the burden of your elder law constituency. This is such a big conversation for us, but it's also a big conversation in the broad context of elder law. And when you're thinking about how to grow a successful practice, yes, there is the ability to do everything, right? You can be all things to all people, but that doesn't necessarily allow you to build a system that's going to be able to be a stable business model for you. I work with lawyers all the time who their model is they take whatever comes in the door, and that's fantastic. But I also have the majority of clients I work with have a certain practice area, a certain legal service that they are really skilled at, and more importantly, they feel incredibly passionately about. And with you having those feelings around your practice, we want to find ways that we can help you meet the needs of your clients, hire the right team to support you, use the law practice technology you need, and ultimately also make the living that you need so you can have a law practice as a business. Today, we're talking about a whole bunch of different things. We're talking about how we can maximize the success of your practice. We're also going to find new ways to effectively meet the needs of your elder law clients. And we're also going to revisit some new ones. Those of you who have been looking at Legal Board's things for quite a while, Legal Board's tools, you know the amazing things that Legal Boards can do for you, but you might not have thought about it this way. So we're going to talk all about best practice tips, ideas, different ways you can do things throughout this presentation. And just like Katie said as we got started, if you have questions, bring them up at the end or also bring them over to me by question here, and I'd love to answer them for you at the end of our session. But we can always be learning from each other. And every practice, as you know, is a little bit different. If there was one way to practice law and be wildly successful, I say this to everyone I meet, we would do it that way and just be wildly successful and happy and have no stress. But there is not one way to practice law. And especially when we're thinking about elder law, seniors who have disabilities, people who have disabilities, people who have physical challenges, mental challenges, emotional challenges, and also just the challenges that come from long life, right? On average, a lot of the folks I'm talking to in my elder law space are in their 90s, if not their early hundreds. We have a long span of life ahead of us thanks to modern medicine, but it's posing a new set of challenges that we have to be able to help our clients navigate and take forward from here. So we need to think about how are we meeting the needs and meeting that client where they are right now, but then we also want to look at the scope around them, right? We want to look at them and say, who supports them? Is it that sandwich generation caregiver? Do they have a spouse who perhaps makes all the meals but isn't that healthy either? Do they have a child with significant special needs who needs your advocacy to help them? What does the future look like for all of those different parties? We have to figure out at the end of the day, who is your ideal client? How are they finding you? What are we doing in the marketing space to make sure that they find you? There are a lot of lawyers out there who may not have your expertise, but are we teaching your professional network? Are we teaching your social media family, your YouTube channel? Are we teaching your website and digital marketing and search engine optimization efforts? Are we teaching them that you are the expert as well, that you are the thought leader? How are we making sure your clients find you, the clients that you want, not everyone, but your ideal client? And more importantly, how do we identify who we don't want to work with? That's such an important conversation, not just who we want to work with, but who we don't want to work with, because then we can narrow down and really get you the type of work and the type of representation that you enjoy and that you can focus on in your firm. So we want to be talking about that in this journey and think about what we can do. So as we think about this again, elder law attorneys may choose to focus on any number of things. And of course, I wasn't exactly sure who we would have join us in this conversation. Some of you may be extremely experienced in your practice. And as I say this to you, you laugh and say, Audrey, you're forgetting 17 other types of representation that I just do on a Tuesday. But also you may be new to this area and be thinking about, what can I do here? We have beneficiary representation, estate planning, elder abuse representation, guardianship and conservatorship, healthcare advocacy, life care planning, long-term care planning, Medicare advocacy, Medicaid planning, probate administration, probate litigation, real estate. This is more and more becoming one of the biggest things I have a lot of elder law attorneys doing. Special needs planning and trust administration. We want to fine tune and figure out, this doesn't mention VA. This doesn't mention all the different things we can do with Social Security. There are so many different ways we can go in your elder law practice. And when you think about what success looks like, success in your practice starts with knowing what you want to do and being able to practice the way that you want to. And the journey of software is not always easy. The journey of legal technology is not easy sometimes to get the knowledge that we know you have in your head and get that applied to a workflow that your legal team can follow. It's hard enough to get it out on paper, get it out on sticky notes. Now getting it actually into a workable process is a whole nother animal. But we want to think about, what are you focusing on? What are the things that you will do? And what are the things that you will not do? And the will not do is probably a whole nother webinar in of itself, because are we building different animals? Are we building different ways to share more business with other professionals that we trust, that we know, like, and trust? When I was first opened my first solo law practice, I was listed as a criminal defense attorney in the yellow pages. I didn't do criminal defense. I did it in law school as a CLI, but I did not do it in my private practice. And so I had to quickly find people I know, liked, and trusted as criminal defense attorneys and educate them in reverse about my business so they could send me my elder law focused materials, and I could send them the type of client that they were looking for, because we got 4 or 5 calls per day and free phone book ads the next year, but it didn't help the first year. So we want to think about, what does that look like for you and for your firm? With that being said, how I think about it when I'm helping lawyers build their calendar, helping them identify how they're going to put together their law firm as a business, we have to really think about the law firm as the business model. I want you out there advocating, but to advocate, you have to have a roof over your head. You have to be able to pay your team. You have to have the support you need. I mean, it may just be you to start. It would just be when I started on my first solo law practice. You have to have the support you need to make things work. So we want to think about, what type of elder law practice are you building? And so when I'm working with law firms, I think so often they're deciding, first off, they're an attorney, start there. Second, they have their practice area, elder law. And then third, their legal service, which is exactly how I think of things as well, those 3 steps. But within that legal service, it gets a little bit more nuanced, right? So what type of practice do you want to have? Do you want to have something I would call a transactional practice? Your clients are in and out the door from intake through closure. They came into you, now you're closing their case within 30 to 90 days. Then we're looking more at the estate planning side, unless we have a client maintenance plan. But is it more transactional? Is that the type of practice that you want? Do you want to have more of an annual relationship with your clients? Do you want to be able to have a client maintenance plan and life care planning and all those different pieces that go into it? Are you looking at multi-year representation? Maybe, and perhaps not necessarily because you want that, but because that's what's going to be dictated by the court as you go into different practice areas. Are you looking to have a litigation practice? The more I work with elder law attorneys, the more I work with attorneys in all fields. This is my question, is, what is your idea, not just your ideal client, not just the problem that you want to solve for your potential client. The second question is, how long do you want to have this relationship with this potential client? who then becomes your client. The reason why this becomes so important is because we have to have the client management tools to support the longevity of relationships. I find so often that we're not thinking about that as attorneys. The number one bar complaint for the last 10 years in every state in America is lack of communication from lawyers. There are other complaints, but that's the number one, lack of communication. When we have a short-term client, so done in and out within a quarter, awesome. There's probably less communication there that we have to do. You never know though. With that being said though, these other three areas, we're looking at multi-layer, multi-level stacked communication. And you think about all the ways we meet our clients, right? At this point, we meet by phone, we meet over Zoom, we meet by physical letter, we meet by email, we meet by texting now. 5 different ways that your client can be jumping in to ask you that one quick question, which we all know is not a one quick question. It's neither quick nor a question usually. But with that being said, we want to think about what's the structure of your law practice. And that also, as we think about how to build, manage, and grow a practice, comes into your bottom line profitability as well. How many, as the Tootsie Pop owl said, how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop? How many clients does it take, and on what cadence of billing does it take to be able to meet your basic operations? What does it take to make a profit? What does it take to be able to plan for the future and have a growth budget? What does that look like for you? And I find so often we are so focused on the fact that I'm an attorney, these are my legal services. We don't sit back and think about, well, what's the cadence of my business? What type of attorney am I? What do I like to do and what do I not like to do? One of my favorite attorneys lets me use him as a reference at all times. He loves doing estate planning and traffic tickets. That's it, estate planning and traffic tickets. You know what? We built a really awesome practice where you can do estate planning the whole time of the month and traffic tickets 2 days a month. So that's great. It works for him. That's something that's amazing. I have a couple of firms that we decided to try out a new idea. They're elder law firms at the end of last quarter in 23. What if they could have one entire week, a month that they were shut down for drafting? That has become a reality. I can say that now to you about 2 quarters later. I'm actually going to teach a course on that at Practice 42 of how to build that. But it's so amazing that we can think about your practice and how you want to get things done. But I find so often we are on fire in our practices. There's so much to do. We don't have time to sit back and think about what we need to do, to move cases forward, because we're having to be reactive instead of proactive, right? That's where I'm going with that. And so we want to look at how we're going to harness tools that are available to us that may feel uncomfortable, that may feel new, and how do we apply it to where we're going in our law practice journey? Okay. With that being said, it's important that we think about this furthering that conversation of the scope of your legal services. And I find there are 3 key areas that I really want you to hone in on. I hate reading slides, but these are important. So I want to break this down for you. So first off, you are an attorney. I'm going to say this to you again. You're an attorney. You chose your practice area, elder law. And now we have our legal services. Maybe I'm going to draft a trust-based estate plan. Maybe someone's going to hire me for estate administration or trust administration. Maybe someone's going to come in and I'm going to handle an elder abuse case. We want to think about what is the length of time for each legal service? And then we have to think about from the perspective of what can you control and what can you not control? Because as you know, if we have court-dependent deadlines, sometimes we can't control those things. You need the legal team. You want a legal team to efficiently get your work done as well as run the practice that you want. There are times when our legal team is not able to do things as easily as we want them to do, and we need to be able to balance who does what in your firm. Is this a you task, you the attorney, or is this a team member task? And that is a big question. That's always my number 3. How much of you is in your legal services? I hate to tell you, but I don't want there to be a lot of you in your administrative legal services, in your billing legal services. You have to have things that you can trust so that you can do the heavy work of being an attorney, because at the end of the day, the magic sauce is all in your head. We just have to figure out how we're going to get it out of your head and be usable for your legal team. And I definitely understand, again, I will say that the idea of not having a legal team yet, I've been there, I completely understand it. But for you as a true solo, or you who's doing all the drafting in your firm or all of the work, we have to figure out how we put you in a system for success. How do we take back your time and get you focusing on your top 6 to 7 hours a day, doing the things you need to do for your firm. And sometimes answering your email is not that thing. Sometimes getting texts from clients is not that thing. How do we optimize, at least have 3 out of your 5 working days as an optimized day? I used to believe that you could truly have a 7-day work week, optimized week. And there was a time in my life I could, but now my goal is to aim for 4 optimized days in a week. And I find when we have that perfect blend of things, 3 to 4 days, then we really see that shift move forward. But your practice area system is how you're going to get things done in your firm. And unfortunately, when we came out of law school, there was really no one out there teaching how to do this. There is nobody coming in saying, you know what, Audrey, if you could just set up your system and your calendar this way, then you'll make oodles of money and have no stress. There's no one coming in saying, use this software, use this, do it this way. Instead, in many ways in law still, we have to forge our own path. And so it starts with getting that magic out of your head. And this is a process, this is a playbook, this is the if-then situation. If someone calls me on the phone, my phone will ring and I will answer it. If I answer the phone, I will read my phone script. If this person matches the type of client I would like to work with, then I'll set them a meeting on my calendar. If I set someone with a meeting on my calendar, then I send them a questionnaire. If I send a questionnaire, then I send a reminder to make sure it gets done. So we have this if-then proposition, and that's the basic side, right? If I do this, then I do this next. That's also the heart of workflow and building a system. So if you've never done this in your firm, or again, as I said, we're going to revisit previous past fun things that we can do. If you have done this before, I personally, in my systems, I look at them every 90 days because I find there's usually one thing. It's actually really great when I don't tweak anything, but I find there's usually one thing that over the course of the last 90 days, I have found I can do better. I can do smarter. I can delegate to AI, to automated intelligence, artificial intelligence. There's a whole lot of things I can do, but I'm always asking me, truly, myself, that question. I read an interesting book just recently called Take Back Your Time, Buy Back Your Time. And it was really interesting on that side because there were about 4 things I had never even thought of in that book. And I was like, you know what? This is a good one. So what will I be doing at the end of this quarter? Rereading my processes with that book in mind and looking for even more ways to essentially buy back my time and not have to do everything by hand. But why start with a practice area system? I have so many attorneys who I talk to about this, and they'll say, well, Audrey, if I let you put me in a box, if you put me in a box, Audrey, then I won't be able to be free form. I won't be able to think about things if I do things the same way every time. And they'll say, I have to have the freedom to do things the way I want to do them. You absolutely need the freedom to do things the way you want to do them on your cases when you're working on something complicated. When I had a probate with 17 horses, 3 pieces of property, 9 states, early on in my career and 2 minor children, I had no idea how to do that. And when I talked to other lawyers with the same situation, they told me we had never encountered those fact patterns. No one knew what to do. Half of the horse farm was in a swamp. That was a protected wetland. Who knew? No one knew how to do that. That's where you use your big thinking, right? Because you're the one who's going to be able to figure it out because you are a smart lawyer. The process that got them in the door, someone called the firm. They were a fit for our services. We set them on the calendar. When we set them on the calendar, we send the questionnaire. When we don't get it back, we send the reminder. We have the first meeting. When they hire us, it's with a contract. Those are things that we can do the same way every time. The client management intake system for your potential new client, same way every time. How we're going to get the documents drafted, maybe the same way every time. In this situation, absolutely no. And this one was true research and figuring things out. But I had time to think about it because our system that brought people in the door was the same way every time. The next couple I saw that week, and I've always remembered this one, I had 2 back-to-back appointments that day and the next day as well. I had 2 that day, 2 the next day. Everyone else was pretty much just a husband and wife and minor children who needed just a quote unquote simple trust. We know there's no such thing, but a revocable living trust. And so that was much easier. So my 4th case with the complicated horse swamp farm, it was crazy. But I mean, those are the things we get excited about as lawyers, right? We find these really cool solutions to help our clients. But that's the safety in having a practice area system. When we know that we're doing 85% of the work the same way every time, like when we have our signings, 85% the same way every time. When we do our Medicaid appeals, same way every time. That gives a lot of safety in how we do things because then we can free up the space in our mind that's already running 180 miles ahead of you. We can slow that down and actually have time to think. I will also say to you, one of the things that saved my practice and still helps me today is having case scenarios and preferences around among the unknown. I always have a folder called wacky things, and wacky things that happen, that's where I put them. When things happen that I've never heard of and never thought could happen, I put it in the wacky things folder. I redact it, take out everybody's name. I usually make it about some sort of like Lord of the Rings character, but then I will change it and put it over there because we never know when we're going to need that again. And so that being said, though, those, again, even building your preferences, even building your case scenarios, that becomes its own system, right? And so that then when you're thinking, 5 years from now, remember that time I had that guy, he had the horse farm. Instead of having to remember someone's name, you have your unusual case examples that we build as a system in your firm as well. So food for thought. So your elder law practice system, this really should be 5 specific areas for your firm, right? There's so much we can do. And as you know, there's so much that goes into running a law practice. But these are the 5 things I really want to see for you. Number 1, intake marketing funnels. You should have lead gen funnels that are delivering you qualified clients through the internet, through your professional network, through the articles you write, through your thought leadership. So if you're speaking in your community, in your state, nationally, they should be resulting in business being sent to you. Number 2, proactive intake. This is you or your team member getting invested in this potential new client early on, figuring out how you're going to communicate and move that forward. Number 3, active case workflow. So now they've hired you under contract. Now we need to get the work done so we can send the closure letter that says you were always a client of our firm, but you know what, at this moment, we're going to close this scope of work and we can start our statute of limitations for our malpractice insurance carrier. Number 4, your closure procedures should be part of that, including your short-term marketing and also your reviews process. If you have questions on how to do that, I'm more than happy. You can reach out to me, book on my calendar on our website, practice4ag.com, and I'll show you what I'm talking about there, because this is very much about building the growth and the development of the side of things. But you need to have these processes in place so that people know how to give you thanks for the great work that you're doing for them. And then number 5, you do want your annual marketing campaign. I am a huge fan of a TOMA campaign, a top of mind awareness campaign. You need to personally be sending something out, if not monthly, quarterly, to your clients so they know how to interact with you, so they know all the things that they didn't hire you to do yet, but you also do in your community. When we think about this overall, just so you know where I'm going with this, I think in 3 specific areas: pre-hire, active case, and post-closure. So the 3 spaces of any client relationship. Pre-hire is everything that happens until they sign the contract, everything that happens over there. Active case, and let me just stay there for a second. Pre-hire is where our intake software comes in. Our intake software is helping us get them over the hurdle to become our clients. And there's all sorts of ways that we can do that. There's all different types of softwares that we can use. We're actually going to look in just a second at legal boards for how we can do that there. Active case is your matter management. So this is how we're getting that work done. Sometimes you can have intake and matter management together, depending on your software. Sometimes you can't. It depends on what you're looking for. Sometimes you may not want to. So we can have all sorts of conversations. Again, no one way to run a law practice. And then 3, post-closure. So how are we going to end this relationship, this phase of the relationship, really strong and really well? I think for elder law attorneys, especially, elder law is a fun legal service to be in, because when you think about it, there's so many ways they can hire you. They can come to you for estate planning. They can come to you for Social Security representation. They can come to you for future estate planning changes. One day they can come to you for Medicaid or VA or long-term care planning. Something might happen to them and they might pass away. And so now we're looking at working with future decision makers, their children, their trust company, to now be focusing on a probate or a trust administration. Maybe there's a longevity trust for a special needs child that you will need to take forward. There's all these different phases of the elder law client. They always say that there's 2 ways in marketing. It's always said there's 2 ways to get more clients. One is to sell more of your existing product to your same client base. So you make shoes, you sell them your next shoe next year. With that being said, the other way is to saturate into your market and get more of the market share, right? Which is what most of us have to do. We saturate in and get more of the market share. But for an elder law attorney, I think it's such a unique space that with the right client management tools, we can move forward and build a relationship with, of course, with client permission, but we can move forward and make that relationship happen with future decision makers. And so we actually can create our own nexus of reality. By the time I sold my first solo firm, I did not see anyone for probate who was not self-generated. And I had a letter I would send out with client consent to future decision makers. And I'd say, hey, if you ever have questions, let me know, but your parents have to be here so we can talk about these things. And in November, just a tip I always had around Thanksgiving, a holiday event for my clients and also for their kids. Come in, ask your questions. Let's all get together. Let's have, what does it mean to be trustee? What does it mean to be a beneficiary? It was a great open house that took about 6 hours, but it was such a client give back. And those are the things we want to be thinking about as we dynamically focus on how we can grow your practice and really, really move it forward. So as you're thinking about this, I would encourage you as you're building an elder law practice or enhancing it, refining it, making it amazing for yourself. These are the 7 questions I ask most of my clients when I'm starting with them in coaching, performance coaching, and we're thinking about their elder law practice or mentorship if they've never done elder law before. What are your goals? Are you just getting started or are you enhancing? What percentages for each legal service will be in your firm? So will we have our criminal law practice and our estate planning practice or our Medicaid practice? What elder law services will you offer and not offer? And then we're going to start building those steps. If I take on this type of case, what does this look like? How long does each legal service take? Is this a 30-day process, a 60-day process? Is this 2 years plus? How will you charge for each legal service? And this is so critical because I find most attorneys say, well, I charge, we'll just use not real numbers. I charge $100, right? Do you charge $100 right then when they're in the meeting and you sign the contract for representation? The second question is, do you sign the contract for representation right then, or do you send it home? Do you take that $100? Have you earned it? Or do we take $50 then? Do we send $25, three months from now, and the other $25 6 months from now? How are you getting paid for your legal services? This is really crucial for your profitability. We need to make sure that we know how we're taking in money and that we're able to afford our monthly overhead. What's the amount that you need to bring in per month, per week, per day, even weekend days? What does that look like? Number 7, who will get the work done for each legal service? This is where our workflow comes in again. And when we say this needs to be drafted, this needs to be researched, this message needs to be communicated to the client, who is that being delegated to? And is it accountable? Are they getting it done so you can look at your software or however you communicate, your Excel spreadsheet, your sticky note system, your Kanban board on the wall? How do you know this is getting done so that you can get it all out of your head and make sure it's not just you, because we cannot have you burn out. You are the most important thing in your practice. This is just an overview. I find sometimes when I talk about concepts, especially workflow, it can seem very in the ether, right? It's one thing for me to kind of list out that if-then scenario for you. It's another thing to see it on paper. So I just want to show this to you. Here we're actually putting together these steps. During phase 1, the law firm will complete the following: initial telephone call and information gathering process with potential client using the initial elder law telephone call checklist and the law firm's conflict check form. Maybe that can be automated. Maybe there's things we can email there. We want to walk through all of these steps. When I'm thinking about things, I start to put them in bold. If I see a place where it's redundant work and we can actually turn it into a process and send it out. So sending out the law firm welcome packet, that should be a click of a button. I don't have to create a law firm welcome packet every time I have a new client. That just goes out. A first appointment confirmation email, that should be able to be scheduled to be the day before the first appointment. So all these different things, we need to be thinking about how we're going to build this out and make it a success for your firm. But this is just this idea of how are we going to walk through this and how do we get the magic of how you want your firm to run to work this way. Let's go ahead and get under the hood on some ideas and so new ways, and then I'm revisiting existing ways that we can help you in your firm to stay on top of your cases. Number 1, and I mean, I think I've said it enough now, and y'all are probably getting my feelings that workflows save lives. Oh, if you haven't read the Checklist Manifesto by Atul Gawande, amazing book. That's really what drove me forward with checklists and kind of solidified my mania on them when I read that. I would highly recommend. That's a great book, Checklist Manifesto. But get the practice out of your head. We should know, if you weren't in your practice today, this afternoon, and someone called me in to say, come in and help us, Audrey, we don't have an attorney here and we need a consultant to cover the bases, I should be able to walk in and know exactly what you are working on and where my next steps are. Can we do that? Could we step out right now? That's a big gut check there. So when to think about what that looks like for you in your practice. But this is so important because you can't be the only one in your firm who knows how to do what you do. You have to have more people involved there who know what to do and who know how to make sure you're supported. Without creating your process, you're not going to be able to hire people the way you want to. You're not going to be able to figure out, more importantly, how you can automate and move things forward so you don't have to do it all. There are so many different steps here that are involved in building your workflow, but so often we as lawyers are so busy, we know how to do, I mean, let's be honest, we usually know how to do everything. So with that being said, martyr syndrome kicks in and we don't want to spend our time actually figuring out how we're going to make things better and move things forward in our firm. So again, here, I wanted to bring you back to a workflow here. This one is for estate planning as opposed to Medicaid. This has funding and client maintenance plan considerations. But again, we're looking at how we systematize, right? We saw a little bit about the Medicaid intake process a couple slides ago. Now we're looking at the estate planning side. Both of them had a telephone call checklist. Once we build our workflows, because again, you're an attorney, you have your practice area elder law, but maybe you're estate planning, maybe you're estate administration, maybe you're guardianship and conservatorship, maybe you're doing trust administration. We want to start to look at things that are similar, things that we can do the same way every time, that way we can make it easier to train our team. So if our team is an intake specialist, they can see, you know what, for all of these practice areas the lawyer is doing, I can send out the same welcome packet. You know what, if I identify the key questions I need to ask in intake, these are the questions I'm going to use. This is the intake form I'm going to use. We want to make this as foolproof as possible as we build this for your team. Very important here as we think about, again, ways to stay on top of everything. We need to get intentional about your intake pipeline. This is so, so, so important. Your intake pipeline is vital to you. You need to know not just who's going to come in your door so we set your calendar appropriately, but so that you know who you're going to be advocating for. And also, at the end of the day, not just advocacy, but how will you get paid for the amazing services that you're offering? So we need to be thinking about this too. The short answer is you need clients, and you need potential clients to become your hired clients. So this is really important that we're monitoring this process. And intake after the first phone call is often a way we can really get under the hood and find ways to streamline and reduce redundant processes. So if we're sending out an electronic intake form, hopefully we've built it into our practice management software, and it's the click of a button for us to do that. And I want to share with you some really cool things that Legal Boards does that I love looking at this. So this is just an estate planning, not just, but it's an estate planning tool. So under elder law, now we're looking at estate planning, and this lets me know what's in front of me. I'm looking at these cards that I've built, and I want my estate plan to be completed within 30 days. Not necessarily trust funding, that's why it's in yellow, but I want everything else to be completed in 30 days. And as I'm looking at this, I want to learn all about my pre-hire card. I want to hear about my made-up client here, Sarah Johnson. I want her phone number. I want to know what she's interested in. I want to see her phone number, and I want to see her move across the board. And you could be as specific as you want. I need to know that she's in the pre-hire phase. You may need to see, oh, I sent her a questionnaire and it's not back yet. Oh, I sent her an engagement agreement. It's not back yet. Oh, I need to send her to the billing department, or I need to bill her. Very important there. For me, I need to know she's in pre-hire. And then when she moves out of pre-hire, she goes into estate planning design. So now we're going to get that work done there. So you want to think about what are the items along the journey. You know, I'm from the old school where we used to have Kanban boards on the wall. I still completely candidly have a Kanban board on the wall because it gives me a sense of security. That's how old I am at this point. I like to move the button forward, but I also have a digital recreation with my team because my team, we have a virtual office, is not in my office. I don't want them in my office. So we have there, and I mean that the best possible way, but in my work where I get my work done in my war room, they're not in that room. But that being said, we move it along, and we move it along digitally so we can all see it together using amazing tools like Legal Boards. Now I'm not calling my staff in the middle of the night saying, hey, where is Sarah Johnson in her process, because I know she's in pre-hire. For Jennifer Davis, who's going to execution and closure, I'm not saying, hey, are you ready for Jennifer Davis's execution and closure meeting? Because they know, don't put her there unless you're ready to go there. I can look and see how many folks are there in trust funding to know that we need to get that done. So you can build this out to whatever works, again, your magic secret sauce. It doesn't have to be the way that I do it. It can be the way that you do it, which is just absolutely amazing. As we continue to move past this process, I wanted to show you that, but then I wanted to also think about how do we stay on top of our elder law cases overall when we're thinking about clients specifically. And I find this is so important. It's not just about taking back your time, but it's being ahead of the client deadlines. We've all had those Sunday nights or day after the holiday where we come back and go, man, I don't want to look at my email. When I look at my email, I'm going to see 75 things, and that's probably a light statement of all the things I need to do. So we need to be able to stay ahead of our client deadlines. So we need to be able to build out a visualization board. So we are always moving forward and we always know that we know the next step that's coming. In my firm in Florida, we file Medicaid applications for other lawyers. That's a very specific timeline and deadline. If someone's coming in, we have to get that done by the 29th of the month. That's our own internal process. We don't like waiting for the 30th and 31st. We have to make sure we're filing and moving that forward. So we have to make sure we have all of our information in, which is where workflow is so important. We're constantly prioritizing what's moving forward. How do we do this next? And you need to have that flexibility in your office because there are so many steps that it takes to get that work done. Yes, if it's just you, you can do it all. But if it's not just you, in some ways it becomes harder, right? Because you need to be able to have a way to check in to make sure things are getting done by your team. And then we have to have that second question of, should it be your team? And I know that sounds weird, right? But you think about it, you're a lawyer, you build this workflow. Then we're going to look at this workflow and identify what are the things that only you can do. Really important there. After the things that only you can do, okay, after we carve those out, now we want to look at your legal team. Now, what can your legal team do? What can we put there? So very important there as well. So now after that, then we have to ask the important question of, what is a redundant task that perhaps your legal team doesn't have to do over and over again? They have to oversee it. They have to make sure it gets done, or maybe not. Maybe we can automate to that level. But what can we take off their plate and give to your AI employee in your firm? Give to your software to go ahead and move this forward. This is where calendaring and deadlines get to be really fun because we can actually move things forward by being thoughtful in how we build and automate our processes. So again, we're going back to these ideas of what we're doing here. I'm going to get this information. I'm going to move this forward. I'm drafting, I'm reviewing things, first appointment, and I'm going to take you back here to the pre-hire phase. Because how do we move it forward? How do we get things moving forward to go forward? And my pre-hire, the minute someone signs their electronic retainer agreement, it kicks them over into the design phase automatically. That is a trigger that is built to be able to kick them over and move them over. That takes off so much time from my team because suddenly, instead of having to go in, tell someone it was signed in order, instead of having to go ahead and catalog it, the document is stored, they've moved on to the next phase, and we're off to the races to support someone. It gets really exciting. So this is where automation comes in. And for you, those of you who haven't thought of automation yet, it gets really exciting to think about how can we ask our process to smart move forward. So if I have something I know is going to happen every 7 days, and I love that in my Medicaid firm, I love to give reminders the last Friday, usually every other Friday, of saying, hey, you know what, we haven't heard anything, but if you do, let us know. We have a couple of different versions on that, but the clients feel still on the loop. They don't need to hear from me, but I like to go above and beyond so they can feel like I'm there. We can send all these different pieces in, and we can also build in these automation steps to make sure that when a step is completed, instead of someone having to go in and actually move the card forward, it jumps forward for them. Now, where does the thought leadership come in? It's your system, you deciding what you want to do. But this is really important. And if you look here on this card specifically, when you go down to the fourth, on the bottom fourth here, email confirmation of your first appointment at law firm name. You can customize all of this. You could customize this to be Dear Sarah, Dear Miss Johnson. All of these custom fields are so exciting. And part of this, when you get the attorney, not the attorney, you are the attorney, when you get the potential client to fill out their questionnaire, you can build custom fields that then move throughout the case. So that way you're not constantly retyping someone's name, trying to do all of these different pieces. It gets really exciting. And when you open yourself up to the possibilities of what you can do in high level management here, and also with automation, you can take back so much time. It really will surprise you. Eliminate redundant data entry is number 4 here. And I know I jumped ahead just a little bit with that, but that's a huge thing in my world. I am from the old school, right? Where somebody called in on the phone and we hand wrote their information in a book, like the second calendar, the actual book you're supposed to keep. We would type literally on a typewriter, their letter to mail out to them. Then we'd have to enter their name into our case management software. Then we'd enter their name into our drafting software, and then off to the races, and we'd enter it again and again and again and again. So there's a lot of power to be taken here when we can get the client to be buying in to what they're doing with us. It also creates a lot of ownership and a lot of engagement with you, with the potential client early on. By filling out forms with you, they want to participate with you. They see your process. So not only are we eliminating administrative work by having the client help us do this, and then by building custom fields that then go into their welcome letter, that then go into the documents you're drafting for them. It's so powerful. The automation and game changing I'm seeing with elder law firms specifically, just the lightest level of automation usually takes back 3 to 4 hours of administrative time. So we can have that conversation. We can have it in the questions today. We can have it offline too, separately, and talk about your challenges and your bottlenecks. But I will tell you, sharing this information is so important. This is one of the spreadsheets that I build when I'm starting to, and I'm just staying in intake here, but in the intake process, things that are in blue require a person. So like someone's going to call the law firm, we're going to talk to them on the phone. We have an intake call. First appointments, usually that's with a person. Discovery call, if we have to do that again, that's very important there too. Call reminders, things like that. Everything in green, we can take back our time and reduce redundant tasks by thinking it through. Our if-then scenario. If I do this, then I'll do this. If this happens, then I'll do this. And we can build out what we want. What's really interesting here is you really look at it too and spend some time in it. You'll see insert timeline. That talks about how nuanced you want to be. For example, I don't like any of my timing to go out not on a weekday. I'd like you to think that I work just on the weekdays. This is not true. But I'd like you to think I only work on the weekdays, and I like to keep it within our office hours, which is 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I don't like my automations to go in the weekends because that creates the illusion that I'm available. And sometimes I am. And then at the same point, I also don't like to do things outside of business hours. So it gets exciting though, as you think about that. Is this going to be a 1-week wait? Is this going to be a 3-week wait? Is this going to be tomorrow? What does that look like? So there's so many exciting things we can do with the automation side of that. I just want to give you a little bit of idea of when we start mapping, just the ideas of how fun it can be. And again, here, going back into legal boards, one of my favorite things it can do too is trust funding. I believe in helping your clients with trust funding, but I also believe in putting a time cap on it. I think that after 90 days, if things have not been funded appropriately, we have to ask the client for help. And so very important for me, it's a counting down timeline from 90 days backwards. After that, I'm going to ask the client to jump in and help me get the straggler assets if they haven't been able to move forward. But a lot of these emails, a lot of my reach outs is automated. You can even automate with certified mail. All of these fun things, the sky is the limit when it comes to automation and having a high level look at your firm. I also want to know the funding is going without me necessarily thinking about it because I've trained a skilled legal team member to get that process done. Instead, I want to have my weekly check-in meeting with that team member and know that things are going well, or if there's an unusual bottleneck they haven't encountered before, then we'll jump in together and figure out what we can do. Okay. So a couple of best practice tips before we wrap up. And who doesn't love best practice tips? First off, we have to create a hub of operations in your practice based on what you need, not what your colleague has, not what your best friend Sam has, not based on what someone told you to have. What do you need? So really important that we're figuring out intake, case management, marketing, what works together, what plays together, what can you track, what can you work together and custom field together to make sure it moves forward through the case. So what works and what doesn't? I mean, this is a deep dive. And I'm a big fan of doing this deep dive with you to figure out, do you have the right hub of operations for you? And if you have something that's not working together, well, then how do we redefine it and make it work? So that's always a very good question to ask as well. And so that would be something that we would dive in and figure out what makes the most sense for you. Number two, don't be on fire in your practice if you can avoid it. Most people come to law firms, I hate to say it, but we know most of our potential clients don't come to us because they're in a great place. They come to us because they have a problem that they need a solution for. So we need to make sure, to the extent that we can, that we know what we do in our firms. We do it the same way every time, saving that 15% origination, unusual things of how we'll get things done. We want to make sure that we are ahead of the curve, so that because your practice isn't set up the way you want it to, you're not making it impossible for you to be able to help your clients in their space as well. So very important there too. With that being said, and I pulled this over here, this is again an example of you can build your process the way that will work for you, so that you will not be on fire. You will know where everything stands in your practice from soup to nuts. Another tip here as we keep on going through tips. I've obviously had too much coffee today. We want to talk now about other best practice tips. Make elder law training a year-long event. Part of this was how to successfully grow and manage your firm. Don't stop with Elder Law Month being in May. Let's keep it going. What else can we do? If you've never worked on your marketing in this area before, let me give you some tips. Choose your message. What problem are you solving? Find your audience. Is it your clients? Is it a friend's clients? Is it someone in your community you'll partner with? Are you going to do direct calls to action using mail or something like that? What are you trying to solve? What problem are you going to help your clients with? It can be so amazing in that space. And then don't forget to look at the whole year. In September, we have Falls Prevention Awareness Week. Great time to have a seminar. You could organize a health fair sponsored by your firm. National Family Caregivers Month in November. All sorts of fun things you could do to really harness the power of elder law and teach others, which really is it's all about, right? You're an attorney and counselor at law, especially in this area. Best practice tip 4, educate your community on what you are doing. You need to build your referral network of professionals in your community. Everyone needs an elder law attorney, no matter what services you offer. Everyone needs your help. You have so much knowledge to give. It is so important that we are out there sharing your message digitally, in person, with your in-person outreach. You as the thought leader, so important that we're getting out there and we're investing in your marketing so people can reach you, so that you can advocate for them. Super important here. Last best practice tip I'll leave with you is, a lot of times when we're working on software, it can seem like a lift. It can seem heavy for us to move that forward and get all that work done. I will tell you though, this really will help you quickly identify and onboard and train the team members that you need. When you have that magic, that secret sauce out of your head on how you get things done, it is so critical. It is so important. And you can get better, stronger, more invested team members, career team members, when you show them how we get things done. It also will help you, the more you build out your process, it will help you start to identify, I find, especially in my coaching practice, it'll help us identify the gaps in the system when we really need more bodies in our office, or when we need more team members because there just aren't enough hours in the day to get everything done. So that's really important that we build out these processes and legal boards, not just for ourselves, but also for the power that we have with our managing our own employees, making them career employees, and then taking some of that work off their plate using the power of AI and delegation too. So again, why do I need a turnkey Medicaid practice area system? Then overall, all elder law, it's because you want to be able to deliver the results that you were hired to complete. At the end of the day, I find that is the magic of how we get things done. Stay ahead of your caseload, know what's coming next, use delegation, be able to create stable environments so your clients know what are coming, your potential clients know where to go to for help and answers, and your professional network just continues to build trust with you in your practice. The last thing I'll leave you with before we go to questions, why does any of this matter? It's interesting. I find most attorneys suffer from martyr syndrome. I blame myself as well. We do everything. And so martyr syndrome runs rampant. I could just do it myself this morning if I wake up at 3 instead of 4, instead of giving it to a team member. But this costs us in billable time. Number one, it costs us in personal time, and it causes unhappiness. It can lead to stress and burnout, stagnate your progress, and decrease your opportunity for future sales and transition. So very important, we're thinking about how do we build a system that works the way we want it to, so that we can support ourselves as we move forward. I know we covered a lot of ground. We have a couple of minutes left for questions, but I'm always here for you. Don't hesitate to reach out, practice42.com. The calendar goes to my calendar. I'm more than happy to brainstorm with you at any time. Our phone number is 850-933-5072. Grab a cup of coffee. Let's brainstorm, get you answers. And then really, if you haven't checked out Legal Boards, I will tell you it is a dynamic tool. It's one of my favorite tools. And so I would take the time to look at it, see how you really could take your elder law workflow, no matter what type of elder law workflow you have, and build it into this really amazing software to get the results that you want. My name is Audrey Ehrhardt, and if we have any questions, I am here.